Welcome back to another episode of Out of Bounds on the Boomer Bus channel. I'm your host, Terry, and thank you if you're a subscriber. If you're not, go ahead and click that button. Either way, hit the like button. All that help grows the channel. I appreciate you. So, I want to talk today about this whole dynamic of man versus woman in today's society in America, and kind of what it's become. Now, we know, at least we should know, that the history, much like a lot of history, is very rooted in aggression, oppression, and discrimination, all that types of stuff. So we know that. If you are somebody that subscribes to the patriarchy and all that, that's cool. That's perfectly fine. You live your lifestyle. But we know of we know of a lot of the problems that have come out of that tradition. And so we got to start there. Like, there's no reason to act like there's not a history. And I've often said that you see a very clear mirror when you look at the discussions between genders and discussions between races, that somehow some people don't seem to see. But if you really think about it and look at it, it's clearly there. So I say that to say, if you don't like people of different races starting off the conversation with trying to sweep it under the rug, act like it didn't happen, or act like it wasn't as bad as it was, or act like it doesn't impact us today. If you don't like that when you're talking a racial conversation, don't do it with the gender conversation. It's the same exact thing, where some people will try to act like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Like, no, like, these are real issues. These are real things. So we got to start from that place. No matter what your other identities are, if you are born a cis male, you're male presenting, you do have that privilege that comes along with it based off our society. So we got to start there. And so going forward, though, we are getting to a place, and I would have to assume, because the data's not there, and I don't think the access was there to look way back, but I have to assume this really started around the Me Too movement or shortly before. And that is this dynamic that we live in today. Obviously, I'm talking more so online, social media type stuff, where we have these men, which I've yet to come up with a good name. A lot of people talk about incels, which I think is not fair and not really productive, to be honest. Like, when people use that, you know what they're talking about, but I don't think it's super productive. And so to say that somebody that can't get, sexual contact with a woman or with a man, whatever you want, or that you might live with your parents, or that you like games, like that's old school nerd stuff. Like, are we really going back to that? We know that stuff's not true. So that goes back to that old idea, oh, you can't get a woman and you like playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like, no, come on. That's silly. So I don't have a good name, but that's the discussion that people kind of rally around, is the incel type. And I think really it's just people in general get on the internet and get bold and want to say things. But whatever it is, whatever we call it, there's this growing group of men with resentment towards women. And they don't think they are. They don't think they're even being problematic most times, but they are. Obviously, we're not talking about the trolls. We know there's trolls out there, but it's more than that. It's not even just the comments. I mean, you listen to enough radio stations and stuff, you hear people call in and talk about it. And it's not always a degrading thing. The same way people talk about race is not always a straight up racist thing, but it is problematic and they don't see it. So it's very interesting because you see some very high profile things coming up with sports, football in particular. obviously, if you listen to the sports stuff, I talked about Deshaun Watson. That's one of the biggest highlight cases we have. And then recently we had Matt Ariza from the Buffalo Bills get cut over a gang rape allegation. And so that's been getting a lot of heat lately. And then, of course, you had the whole Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp thing on the entertainment side. And so these conversations are kind of in the forefront in different areas. But I think for me, it boils down, not boils down to, but what really seems to be a big conversation is around this idea of women lying and getting men in trouble. And again, you see a direct pushback on believe women. And so again, you think about the Me Too movement, you think about the things that kind of sprouted out of that, and you had this, as I said again, resentment that built up until people just started to completely push back. And I would have to go ahead and say Donald Trump really inflamed a lot of that, just like he inflamed a lot of the racial stuff. And so now we're in this world where people are just very toxic and combative online against women. And it's just very much not productive, because there is a conversation about people lying, victims lying, or, false allegations, all that. Obviously, it always is a conversation, and it absolutely happens. And how we negotiate it as, human beings in America, it hasn't been handled well on either side. I can say 100% that there's people who are advocate for women or victims in general, that a lot of their rhetoric and a lot of the stuff they say isn't productive either. And the way they talk about engaging in the opposition is not productive. But then 100% there's people on the other side, mostly men, that are pushing back against any victim, that are completely, not only they're not productive, they're very toxic. The stuff is sick. The stuff is downright sick. I don't care what anyone has to say to me. That's how I look at it. When you're talking about anybody, sexual assault, harassment, obviously rape, like that stuff is not cool. And the way you can get behind a keyboard and try to come at somebody for those allegations is not cool, because you could sit here and say she might be lying, but what if she ain't? And you don't understand, obviously, the impact that has on somebody who went through this trauma and then is going through a second and third trauma, having to get this backlash. So that stuff is sick to me. It's very toxic. And so anyway, I do think it comes down to this resentment. And you have this resentment towards women. You have these discussions with men, amongst men, about women, and this idea of believe all women. Oh, well, you could just ruin somebody's career. You could just lie and ruin somebody's life. And look, I just said that stuff is sick. Right up there, ranking right up there for me, is somebody's life being ruined off false allegations. That's sick to me, no matter who it is. So I get it, and I 100% identify with it. And as I said before, a couple times, many times probably, not too long ago, I was like a lot of these people. I was toxic, not like harassing anybody or anything like that, but I thought too, like, believe all men and like all that stuff that's counterproductive. And you get mad at somebody saying all lives matter to somebody saying Black Lives Matter, but then you could say believe all men to someone saying believe all women, like, and don't even see the crossover. I was that type of person, and so it wasn't that long ago. So I get it. And I still get it to this day. Look, there's especially in the line of work I do, there's 100 things that I'm always thinking ahead about, so that I'm not even putting myself in a situation to have it look, a certain type of way. And it really weighs on you, and it does become scary. Like most people that aren't, you probably don't work with students. You probably don't work with young people. And so that's not even a thought all the time. But as somebody that does, like, that stuff is scary. It's scary. So I 100% get it. But as I said, there's a productive way for us to have this conversation about how do we talk about this with young men? How do we teach young men to engage in this? And the same thing with young women and all people, of various genders. How do we, as a social contract, engage with each other in a way that respects the very real danger of somebody being sexually assaulted, raped, but also addresses the very real danger of somebody might get in their life ruined off false allegations. So there is a space for that, but we haven't gotten there, and we haven't done even any real work to get there. But what's growing now is just, the ugly opposition to what people might thought was extreme with a lot of the Me Too stuff, where the pendulum has swung all the way the other way. And I never think that's okay. Yes, again, as I stated at the beginning, a lot of women were in those places of oppression. And so to take what men were able to do and to swing it to, well, whatever anybody says, if they're a woman, is solid gold. That's not cool either. Again, there's that middle space. So a lot of people have been raging against that, and I think just showing resentment. So when you talk about Deshaun Watson, and I made my feelings pretty clear on it, but it's a very simple thing. When you have 20 plus people telling their stories for various angles and reasons, and then you have people who didn't ever pursue criminal or civil charges, but came out and said their story and it was similar to the other people, they not gaining no money from that. But for somebody to lay out their situation and for you to respond with, she's lying, she just wants the money, it's silly. And it's one thing for it to be one person, and that's bad enough, trust me. But for somebody to say, oh, these people are conspiring against this man, and now it's 30 plus people, and then there's factual information that he was contacting 60 plus people, but yet you have the audacity to sit here and call these people liars? Like, how do you think that lands with a person who's a victim of something? And it's just really ugly to see humans treat each other like that. And it's not productive. So, and then you get, again, the typical internet people with internet muscles that want to combat every single point to try to, either gaslight or turn the situation to make it look like this person is lying or not credible. And for what? In defense of somebody you don't even know? There's plenty of people that don't even watch football that was out here trying to troll and talk and support Deshaun Watson. And so again, you got the whole Johnny Depp thing, which the movement was crazy. You show me as famous and as cool as Johnny Depp has been in his career, or as far as, popularity, show me the massive amount of talk and push behind him prior to this case. So you have people probably never even watched Johnny Depp, Team Depp, everything. It was crazy. And at the end of the day, to be honest, you just had two messed up people doing messed up things to each other. And the fact that Amber Heard was a woman, people felt might give her a lot more leverage for people to believe her. And so they rallied against it. And it ain't against Amber Heard. It ain't against none of these women with Deshaun Watson, who they have no idea who they are. They're rallying against this idea and this concept and this resentment they have towards women. And until they can recognize that, until we can recognize that, there's going to be no improvement. So, and then you get Ariza, who's accused of gang rape, which happens so often on college campuses. Like, I see all the media, clutching their pearls, going, oh my God. And as you should, it's sick. But at the same time, people got to wake up. That happens so much. It's really messed up. And again, it keeps lending itself to this conversation of this power and privilege position that men have had. Obviously, white men more so than anybody. And this real bad relationship we have as men versus women. And then, of course, there's space to say that people don't all identify the same way. And I respect that. But, it's still, this conversation is needed, and it still is very prevalent. So I'm not saying that I have any answers, but we get so much of this that is resentment and then false equivalency all the time. And that is a problem with all discussions, where people are just like, well, what about such and such? They didn't do that, so I guess we should be all blah, blah. And it's like, wait, the same thing with Deshaun Watson. People use this tactic in any toxic group. As you can see, it doesn't matter the topic. All these toxic people online have the same, familiar tactics. But it's the same thing with Deshaun Watson. Well, what about this person? So I guess we should be doing this. Look, whether they got it right or wrong with another person, what does that have to do with what this person did? That's what we're dealing with. What did this person do? So if they screwed up with an owner, or if they screwed up with a white guy, or if they screwed up with a different woman, so now we're supposed to let anybody else go, and we're not supposed to even, consider it. That's so silly. It's a false equivalency. That case has nothing to do with this. Did this person do something? And I just see it more and more, and it's very concerning. Again, I don't have the answers, but I'm scared to where that's going to lead. You could say the same thing about the polarization with our discussion on race and ethnicity in this country as well. But yeah, it's getting to an ugly level, and it's really sick to me. Like, there is space for somebody to be healthy and secure in their manhood and their masculinity without becoming this very toxic, combative person with women in all these situations. But it's the same thing with Trump and anything else. People can sit here and say, well, we're past that. We're cured. We're enlightened. We're in a different world. But as soon as the situation presents itself for people to voice their frustration, we see the truth. Racism ain't dead. Sexism ain't dead. All this stuff is everywhere. And so, I just wanted to get my thoughts on that. I've been thinking this for a long time, actually. But you start to see more and more where you really can't deny it. It's in your face, where there's a growing and strong section of men that really think some of this stuff is okay. And I get it. Like, first there's the judicial system, innocent until proven guilty. But you got to look at the facts in anything. As I always say, you got to look at the facts and the info at hand. But there's no room for people dismissing people's allegations. It's just not. It's not. There's no room for it. You don't have to sit here and say this person is guilty. But at the same time, you're not going to sit here and say, oh, this person's just lying. How do you know? Oh, I really like that guy. I don't think he would ever do it. So what? So, that's my thoughts. So go to the comment section. Let me know what you think. Share it around. Get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for going out of bounds.